My friend Phil is one of the gentlest people I know. He's soft-spoken, he's thoughtful, he's a therapist. Every Thursday night we sit together in a meditation group, and sometimes we sit and meditate in silence, and sometimes we talk about spiritual growth, about the habits and practices that help us become a little more calm, a little more aware. And a few weeks ago, Phil told a story. He lives on a small farm in rural Wisconsin. Beautiful country, but not a lot of options when it comes to auto repair. In fact, there's only really one shop nearby. Phil needed new tires. So he dropped his car off in the morning, and the mechanic told him it would be ready later in the day. When he returned, the mechanic explained that one of the lug nuts was locked and they couldn't get the wheel off. They asked if they could keep the car until the next day. No problem, Phil said. The next day he came back, the car was still sitting there, exactly where it had been the day before. Same wheels, same tires. Another explanation, another promise. And the next day, the same thing happened. So by the end of the week, Phil had made several trips to the shop. And each time he was assured the problem would be fixed, and each time he returned, absolutely nothing had changed. So finally he had had enough. He asked for the keys so he could take the car somewhere else. But the young man working there refused to hand them over unless Phil paid for the time they had spent trying and failing to fix the problem. Phil tried to reason with him. The conversation got tense. And in that moment, something happened inside of Phil. My gentle friend Phil, the therapist, suddenly had the thought, I want to punch this kid in the face. He didn't, of course, but the feeling was there. Phil told the story to our meditation group he was embarrassed because the experience showed something about him that a lot of us recognize about ourselves. Keeping your cool is not easy until it isn't, or rather it is easy until it isn't. Jewish tradition has long valued what we call equanimity, which is the Hebrew word for that is hishtavut, which describes a kind of inner steadiness. It's the ability to remain balanced even when things around us are frustrating and chaotic. And one of the clearest statements of this idea appears in the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidism. In a collection known as Tzavat HaRivash, he writes, a person should cultivate a state where praise and insult are the same in their eyes. When honor and humiliation no longer control your emotional state, he says, then you can serve God. And the Baal Shem Tov is suggesting that the real obstacle to spiritual life isn't only wrongdoing or ignorance, it's an emotional dependence on other people's behavior. If our mood rises and falls with every interaction, if praise lifts us and criticism knocks us down, then we're constantly being pulled around by forces outside of ourselves. And equanimity, doesn't it sound a lot like Stoicism? Equanimity is a form of freedom from that cycle. Of course, reading that teaching and living it are two very different things. Anyone who's waited on hold with customer service or disagreed with a coworker knows how quickly calm can disappear. So the question becomes practical. How do you actually develop equanimity? And one answer comes from the idea of spiritual practice. A spiritual practice is simply a habit we repeat regularly to shape our character. Let me say that again. A habit we repeat regularly to shape our character. So just as physical exercise strengthens the body, spiritual practices strengthen our inner life. And over time, they begin to change how we react to situations. So Hasidic teaching, again, the Baal Shem Tov, offers several such practices. 3 in particular I'm going to point out today that cultivate equanimity. The first is learning not to depend too heavily on other people, as I mentioned. The Baal Shem Tov teaches that a person should not place ultimate trust in human beings, not because people are malicious, but because they are limited and unpredictable. When our peace of mind depends entirely on others behaving exactly as they want them to, we're going to be frustrated. I mean, that's just how it works. At some point, people will frustrate you. But trusting something deeper, trusting that life has meaning even when people disappoint us, creates a bit of stability in our life, emotional stability. The second practice is serving others. The Baal Shem Tov taught that sometimes a person encounters another human being specifically to help them. An interaction that appears inconvenient may actually be an opportunity for kindness. And when our attention shifts away from our own irritation and towards someone else's needs, our perspective changes. The ego loosens its grip. What felt like an offense becomes just another moment in the flow of life. The third practice is cultivating joy, which is just a centerpiece of Hasidic thought. The Baal Shem Tov repeatedly emphasizes that joy opens the heart. Sadness and resentment tend to trap us inside our own reactions. Joy, by contrast, expands our awareness and makes it easier to step back from the moment. Joy doesn't eliminate difficulty, but it changes the way that we carry it around the world. So taken together, these practices hopefully, gradually reshape our character. They don't remove frustration from life, but they make it easier to face it without being overwhelmed. So let's bring us back to Phil. After telling the story about the tire shop to our group, he admitted something, well, I don't think a lot of us would notice this inside ourselves, but he noticed it inside himself. And yeah, we would. Even though he didn't lose his temper outwardly, the anger stayed with him for hours afterward, right? When we get all upset over things, we really carry it, and carry it with us for not a short amount of time. His mind kept replaying the interaction. Sound familiar? His body felt tense, and it took him a long time to shake it off. And he hated that feeling of being internally twisted up. So what could he have done differently? The leader of the meditation group responded with a reflection about equanimity. He suggested that the goal is not to eliminate anger. That would probably be unrealistic. The goal is to notice it sooner, loosen its grip, and return to balance more quickly. So Phil listened, and then he smiled, and he said once again, "At least I didn't punch him in the face." And just like we did, everyone laughed. Spiritual growth rarely arrives as a dramatic transformation. Most of the time it shows up in small moments of everyday life. We don't react, moments when hopefully because of that, irritation fades a little faster than it used to. And character is built that way, not through grand gestures, through those small things, but through repeated practices that slowly reshape our habits. So over time, those practices make life feel calmer. Relationships become easier. The emotional storms that once consumed us begin to pass more quickly. And when the inevitable frustrations of life appear, like a stubborn lug nut that refuses to come off, we find ourselves just a little better able to keep our balance. Shabbat Shalom.